My name is Rios Naus. I'm a Stewardship Ambassador. I'm a certified public health educator. I'm a dad, and I own and operate We Grow With LLC. So I'm getting to know this new space. And in this new space, we had a weather event come through. There was surface erosion and runoff. And as I'm nurturing this space, I'm trying to do as many things as possible to allow nature to work on my behalf. I don't want it to grow weeds. I don't want it to flood. I don't want there to be mosquitoes. I don't want it to be hard when I step on it. I don't want to get hurt or cut accidentally. Like, I am going to nurture this space so that my kids can run without shoes on and play with the dog. To do that, I have several different tools. Some of my own creations, some of others, but it really is to help people understand what has taken place in this space. The actual environmental story that it's now suffering from or succumb to. Because of the slope and what is called ground compaction, that impact to that system did not allow water to percolate in. Instead, it ran away. Right? A lot of people misunderstand terms, and so I want to clarify between the term desert or desertification and the term arid. Okay? When an ecosystem enjoys it being dry and has no problem thriving, that is an arid environment, right? Desertification is when the life that lives there and loves there and thrives there, including people, all the scales, doesn't want to live there anymore and leaves. Some of it leaves by air, and that's what's called a dirt devil, right? Sucking up minerals high up into the atmosphere. That's what creates hailstones. So literally, the cause and effect of it sucking to live there sucks it away, and at that point it's looking for opportunity elsewhere. What I'm going to do to this space is provide what it needs as an ecosystem. I call it habitat hospitality, because if I don't do anything, it only can do what the system is telling it should do to rectify the situation. This tool here is called a penetrometer. It's used in many different ways, and in many different fields, but all it really does is tells you how much pressure in pounds per square inch that is being exerted to just get through. That's how hard-headed this system is. When I push down on it and apply a small amount of pressure, it starts to penetrate down through the soil profile. When it hits 200 pounds per square inch, air can't go into the soil profile. If air can't go into the soil profile, it can't breathe. If it can't breathe, the things that need air to breathe die. And that's what changes it from an aerobic to an anaerobic system. Nature will try to fix the fact that it's dead here. There's a difference between dead and dry. That's why people get confused between arid and a desert. This is devoid of life in this successional scale. What then happens is that the life that can do and break through are told to germinate. That germination is why people have weeds. They're literally told to get to work. I don't want weeds to grow in my lawn. And by weeds, I'm specific by windblown seeds and usually things with thorns. And as my son Nathan once said, rude plants. The plants that when you bend over to smell another one, they stab you in the butt. That's a rude plant. So I don't want rude plants in my area that I'm cultivating and nurturing. So because the water flowed off this hill, I'm using principles that I've adapted from Mark Shepard's Water for Every Farm book. Amazing resource. I recommend learning how water movement can actually do many tasks so you don't have to. It's about setting up a system with intention. I don't want to have to water this area. So I'm going to bring the water through this area in the slowest way possible, allowing it to percolate through that system as gravity pulls it lower and lower. So as the water came down, I'm going for about 1 degree drop for 100 feet. That's something that literally you can eyeball if you can make a straight line. At that point, I'm then cutting over and across to where the erosion came off the hill. I'm going to swoop that water through. Now, other people make cuts and trenches. I don't want to do that. What I'm trying to do is create access so that the water can flow below ground versus having to be redirected above ground. I don't want it to have the chance to be above ground. I want it to penetrate into the system. And for every 1% of soil organic matter increase, we gain approximately 25,000 gallons of water holding capacity per acre. That's the water that I don't have to water because it was brought to us on our behalf. So, as I'm working my way across this area, I've also come across pockets where I had much greater access. That access was done for me by the local ground mammal called a gopher. And gophers, if you have the opportunity to learn from them, will go for this and go for that. And as that gopher comes through that system, it creates a 2-inch, maybe a little bit bigger main line that can pull the water out of that drainage area below ground and send it off into lots of different directions. What I'm doing when I find one of those lines is, because I've connected it with the slope of the hill, I'm then able to allow that gopher hole to take even more water quicker. If I'm standing on this cultivator fork, at that point my ground compaction layer is approximately 2 inches below the surface. With a ground compaction layer that shallow or close to the surface, there are other things that affect it. These are also other signals for weeds to grow. The other things that affect it in this case is actually ultraviolet light. Ultraviolet light can penetrate down into the soil profile, sterilizing it of the microbiome needed to germinate and improve that soil's condition. So when we don't have an O horizon or living green plants over the top of it, we are allowing that ultraviolet light down into that mineral profile, baking it to death. When you have proteins that, and amino acids are part of that, when you have these bonds together and that heat and ultraviolet cooking is also part of it, then at that point you have something that's been denatured. Literally, that's what the word means, to be denatured. We've taken the nature out of it. So when we have a mineral profile, it's required to have a microorganism creature component that then allows this to turn from dead dirt into living soil, because it's alive. It lives. What we're helping it to do is now breathe. And so by us creating access into this soil profile, allowing the water to come off the hill and then percolate through the system, it's going to continue down the hill, watering and acting as a giant sponge for the water that's needed throughout the system. We'll also be using foundational fungi in the planting of seeds and top dressing, because to access this water, we're going to have a fungal network that interlocks and actually interweaves all of the plants growing here. It's called a mycorrhizal network. So by shifting how the water flows, we can allow that flow to nurture what is called a fungal energy channel. And so we're going to flow through that channel, nurturing this whole space. But yeah, the tricky thing is to share these beautiful restorations, transformations, revitalizations that are taking place all over the country. And honestly, the world. I'm fortunate to have learned many lessons about even outside of our own sphere of influences. Like, the people I work with are having the same problems that this land is having right here. For many of the same reasons, actually, just at different scales. And in this space, we're dealing with ground compaction. I was just in Texas dealing with ground compaction, in Kansas dealing with ground compaction, and Indiana dealing with ground compaction. It becomes a limiting factor. And at scale, it's tricky to deal with that with the tools when we're thinking mechanical. And some people even do weird flocculation components, mineral-based, but don't take into the account the microorganisms that actually live there. In this spot right here, because the ground compaction was greater than 200 pounds per square inch, it couldn't breathe, which meant no water's flowing through it either. At that point, it exceeded 200 pounds per square inch. 300 pounds per square inch, it's telling thistles, things covered in thorns and seeds that blow in from who knows where in the whole world. But they're told that this spot needs to be broken up and to have organic material put into that space. And because of the type of root structure they have, they're actually to pull down deep in that soil profile, bringing that material to the surface, allowing for a physical cycling as well. And then my own action to move and lift, we uplift, right? At which point the tension and cracks, these fissures that have created access, radiate three-dimensionally into that soil profile. That is now similar to the structure of our own lungs. That these small holes up here on the surface pull it down and have it percolate through and then function with capillary action. It's amazing. And so a foot in every other direction past that compaction zone can now breathe. When I use the right tools, I'm then able to move in a normal fashion and then apply same pressure. And because of the access granted here, it makes it easier to do the same thing and connect that space. Because of intentions of having water flow, the space on this downward edge of the slope becomes the physical compaction line, which then forces water along that slope and across the hillside. The whole time percolating through the rest of this access web that goes down in some spots with the gopher holes, who knows, 20 feet? Like, these gophers actually have brought up stuff. Here's an example. Somebody in this area has been shooting clay pigeons. Awesome. I have enjoyed it too. But this now becomes part of what the soil matrix is. And so I can utilize this material as a mineral to actually nurture the rest of this space. And I wouldn't have this resource if the gopher didn't bring it up for me. There are artifacts and evidence of the past. They'll bring up bits of carbon that was from a fire who knows how long ago. Like, they are adding air and water passage into this, just like you would add a 2-inch PVC pipe running water to a barn. They're pushing that fluid all throughout this space, bringing up potentially little treasures for us to utilize. And what I'm doing is just working with that system to achieve my own goals by nurturing what should be mutual, big picture, common sense, goals for everything growing. And that's why with we grow with all of these things, or it's harder for us. And so I won't have the weeds, I won't have the erosion, I won't have the flooding, I won't have the mess. I will have a place that I can hear my children laughing and the birds singing and enjoy the sunshine. While the place beneath my feet is radiating with a beautiful teeming team that is what all of us need to be working with more and more, both internally with our own gut microbiome and externally with this planet's. My name is Rios Naus. I'm a stewardship ambassador. I'm a certified public health educator, I'm a dad, and I own and operate We Grow With LLC. We Grow With helps people to differentiate between fertilizer and fertility. We use products and services. We equip people with the observation tools they need, as well as the products that make their jobs easier, allowing them to turn dead dirt into living land at any scale.